I'm super excited to welcome today a very a very special guest, a living legend of our times, the founder of one of the most loved and dear companies, founder of Reebok. I have the privilege to welcome Joe Foster. Joe, great to have you, and thank you for making the time.
That's no problem, Marion, and thank you for the invitation. It's always nice to meet people who are interested, and hopefully what we are going to go through today will be very interesting to everybody watching or listening.
Joe, there's so many questions I'd love to ask you, but since I had a chance to introduce myself a little bit about the journey you have done, and you had some tremendous difficulties to overcome during your lifetime, but maybe starting from the beginning of what inspired you? How did it all start? Just for a brief introduction for the ones who haven't had a chance to read your story yet, which I highly recommend. And you can see in the background the shoemaker. So it'll be great to elaborate further. But maybe just for the audience to share a few words of what inspired you to start this amazing brand.
Well, getting to the inspiration, we have to go through the family business. My grandfather, he is credited with pioneering the running spike, which he made for himself in 1895. Not many people had spike running shoes in those days, and that became an advantage, which actually created for him business, a fantastic business. He had a lot of gold medal winners in his shoes and world record holders. And so grandfather started off J.W. Foster and Sons in Bolton and became very famous, but they were handmade running shoes. So he didn't really build a big business, but a very well-known business in those days. And he died in 1933, which was, well, I wasn't born until 1935, 15 months later, and I was born on his birthday. So my grandfather was Joseph William, and I am Joseph William because grandmother insisted I brought my name with me. So I am Joseph William after my grandfather. Of course, after grandfather died, his son took over the business, which was my uncle and father. And that was okay whilst grandmother was still around, because grandmother Mariah, she kept them in check and really kept them sort of nose to the grindstone and really working hard. But when I was 17, I went to do, 18 actually, I went to do national service. I'd only been 1 year in the J.W. Foster business, just spent 1 year. I joined at 17. 18, my brother and myself, we both had to do national service. Jeff, he went away to Germany. That's where he saw Adidas and Puma. I stayed in the UK. I was taught things about radar and other things. However, whilst the period was 2 years, wow, 12 months of those 2 years I spent playing badminton, really, because the RAF, they loved sports people. So I had a good time doing my national service. However, we were to come back, Jeff and myself came back together, same time. And this is 1955. And we come back, we'd been away, so we'd learned a little bit of life, something different. And we came back and we saw a failing company. J.W. Fosters were failing. And the reason, grandmother had died, and in fact, my father and uncle were at war with each other. A bit like Adi Dassler and Rudy Dassler.
I was thinking, yeah, exactly about Adidas and Puma later on.
But of course, whilst Rudy Dassler left the Adidas company and set up his own Puma company, that didn't happen for the Foster family. They just had feuding, and we couldn't talk any sense into them. We're saying, look, we need to change. We're still making the same shoes that we were making in the 1930s and 1940s. Yeah, we have to move forward. Nothing we could do could change his mind, though. We tried to get my father to sort of say, come on, if we can't change here, let's do something together. And his answer was, look, when your uncle's gone, I'm gone, this company will be yours. And, it was like, well, we don't want you to go. That's not what we wanted. We want you to change. But if we don't, this company will be gone long before you are. And it was 1958. Jeff and I, we tried, and we decided to go to college and learn a bit more about shoemaking. And the best thing we learned about going to college is we met people who knew how to help us. Because, I mean, I don't say they convinced us to set up our own business. We were determined to do that. But they could tell us things, where to get machinery from, materials, and a lot of help. So in 1958, Jeff and myself, we left the family business and we set up 6 miles down the road from the family business in the next town, Bury, and we set up a factory in an old brewery. And it was a very old building, falling down almost. So that's the beginning.
Wow. So basically, you were privileged in many ways to actually see, and you already had that in the family, but you won't settle. Your drive to do something better and continuously improve inspired you actually to, well, if you can't do it with your family business, you might as well do it with your brother and set it up, which is great to hear, because you did it with your brother versus against with each other. So it was the opposite.
Absolutely, yes. And it was quite amazing. Whilst my father and uncle just couldn't get on together, it was war. Jeff and I, we never fell out. We never had a bad word. It was Jeff. He loved the factory, so all he wanted to do was make shoes, and that was great. And so we had an arrangement where Jeff would do that, and I'd do everything else. I had to do the selling and the marketing and whatever, and quite a lot of the designing. So we had our own places, and we didn't fall out. I must have done a lot of silly things in on that road, but Jeff didn't. It was never any bad words between us at all. He was happy. I think he thought, well, if he gets it wrong a few times, he'll get it right in the end.
Absolutely, no. Well, Joe, so 1958, right? That's when it all began for you. It took, how long did it take you to become the number one in the world?
I think that's about 30 years. I'm not near enough. I think it became number one in the late 80s. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it was, I suppose the late 58, I think we became number one in about 86, 87. So it took a long time. And I mean, we started as two young people. And, it didn't work with the Foster family. The family business didn't work. So, of course, we had to move as we did. And we went and we set up our Mercury Sports Footwear. And, of course, that's not the name we know the company for. We know the company is Reebok. But, and this was probably our first test. 18 months after being in business, our accountant, he said, "You're doing very nicely. Register your name." And, we're very young, 23, 25. We didn't know what registering really meant. We're making shoes. What do we need? And he told us, well, if somebody else thinks you're making a good product and decide they'd like to make Mercury footwear, Mercury sports footwear, you can't stop them. You would have a fight. You would have to go to court to say, look, that's our name. So we learned we had to register the name, and we found it was already registered. I think it's British Shoe Corporation already had that registered. So I was told to go and see a patent agent in Manchester. I did. And he said, well, they will sell it to you for £1,000. But, we set up a whole factory for £250. We didn't have £1,000 in those days. It was like impossible. So he said, okay, then you need to bring me 10 names. I said, 10 names? Why? Well, we've got to test them with the register. As you know, Mercury is already pre-registered. Our problem is we need enough names to test so you can get one. And he pointed through the window. It was a very nice day in May. And he pointed to a sign, Kodak. And I said, okay, what's with Kodak? So, well, that's an invented name. They made it up, so nobody can question it. It's their name. Okay, so I go back to, we're sitting around, and I don't know if anybody has sort of thought, well, we've got to invent a new name. You know, we're down the road with everything there for America. And we're sitting around the table. Well, let me take you back to 1943. This is in the middle of World War II. And a bit like today with COVID, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't go places, no longer to seaside holidays. Everything was stay at home. And we had these events, these home events, and one of them was a 60-yard race, a running race for 60 yards, and I won the race. Great. I did have an advantage. I was wearing Foster spikes. So that was an advantage. Not many people had spikes in those days. So I won the race, and I go to collect my prize. And what do I get? A dictionary. And I thought, where's the football, guys? No, come on. You know, what can I do with a dictionary? And what I did learn, it was an American dictionary, an American Webster's dictionary. And of course, there are a lot of spellings, American spellings, different than, say, an Oxford English dictionary, and the spelling that I would be expected to use. So a bit disgusted, but still, here we are. Now we're in 1960, and there's my dictionary sat next to me. Right. I like the letter R. I thought, I said, that's good. So I open my dictionary, and I open it R and start thumbing through. Very soon, I come across R-E-E-B-O-K, Reebok. Small South African gazelle. Gazelle. That was it. Gazelle. That's the one. You know, we thought some names like Cougar or Falcon. You know, they were good names. So, but this was going to the top of the list. And I went back to the patent agent and said, look, here's your list of 10 names, but this one is the one we want. We've got to be in love with this. This has got to be our passion. You know, we've got to, you know, this is a product, and we really sort of got to get behind it. And so we said, well, we'll try it. And as it happened, Reebok was the only one out of the 10 names we gave him that came out totally clear that we could use. So that's how it became Reebok.
Wow, what a great story. And so I love also the association, you know, that's what you made, you know, and the gazelle side. Now I understand. And we must have been going through a lot of ideas when you select a name. It's like your baby, right? When you when you have a family, it's one of your really kind of dear companies that you're creating. And Joe, if you think about really 30 years, in those 30 years, what are the kind of key moments, especially for young entrepreneurs who actually starting out companies or already have businesses? What are the lessons that you could share along that journey that could be relevant to today's world? Even though you started back in the days, I'm sure there are many things that are still valid to today's date, because everybody is interested. How do I grow? How do I make things better? That have, at least the ones who have businesses, others may not want to have, but it's not easy. It's not necessarily detailed. There's a lot of materials available, and I think we live in the best time. But you must have had limited resources. You know, you would, even though I guess there's not a lot of competition back in the days versus today, but still that goes proportionally with the amount of tools and resources that are available today that you can have. So what did it take, and what are the major milestones to really get you to the #1 spot?
Well, when Jeff and I left the family company in 1958, and we wanted to set up a sports footwear company, we looked and we saw Adidas and Puma, and Adidas were already in the UK, and they had already taken football or soccer, depends if you're American, it's soccer, but over in Europe, of course, it's football. And they were already big in that. And we knew to get into that business would have cost a lot of money, and not necessarily would we have succeeded. So we stayed with what we knew. That was athletics.
Mm-hmm.
Athletics in those days was just track and field, and that's where the spikes came in. And we were lucky, or maybe I found something that I could work on, and that was the 3As, the Amateur Athletic Association. They produced a handbook, and in the handbook were about 200, 250 different athletic sort of clubs that were round and about in the UK. And in those clubs, and in the book, we had the name and address of every club secretary. So this is an idea. So I wrote to every club secretary, offer them a discount, and said, if anybody wants to be an agent, they can have the discount. And I got over 150 agents, which was great. Previous to that, I'd gone out on the road calling on sports shops and saying I'm Reebok, and they would look at me blank and say, "Who's Reebok?" And they said, "Well, like your product's nice, but look, I've got Adidas and I've got Dunlop. Why do I need Reebok?" And that was an important question. That was, why do I need Reebok? A very important question. And that's what inspired me. We went down to athletics meetings. We went direct. The retailer was the middleman. A sports shop is middle. Our customers were athletes. So we went to races and events, and we started selling and that's where I got the idea after getting hold of the 3A's handbook. I got the idea that if I write to all the secretaries, and so that expanded our business quite nicely. And but that wasn't big enough. Athletics was only a small sport, really. But I knew that America was such a big market. I knew every college, every university had coach, and coach was God. And people could go to universities on a sports scholarship. Well, I needed to get into America. Okay, so fortunately, and we're now at 1968, I'm reading a magazine, and it's a sports business magazine, and there's an advertisement in the magazine from the British government, and they're saying, we'd like you to export. Good. Okay, we'd like to export to America. Just what I wanted. Fantastic. And they were willing to pay for a stand at the NSGA, which is National Sporting Goods of America, show, and that went on in Chicago in February in Chicago. And that's very cold. But they were willing to do that. They were willing to pay for the stand, pay for our return airfare, and half of our expenses there, so half of the hotel bill. That was a no-brainer. The family were a little sort of hesitant before we found that, because they didn't see how I could justify spending the money to go to America, with the hope that I would get some distribution. So when I found this government offer, well, there was very little objection then. So this was fine. In 1968, I'm off to Chicago, and I took a 2-week ticket. You can get a ticket which allows you to stay away for 2 weeks, and it's a little bit cheaper. I don't know why I picked on the cheaper ticket, because the government were paying anyway. But staying for 2 weeks was useful, because we went to New York. I went with a friend, and went to New York and checked out New York. First time I'd ever been there. I'm checking out the sports shop. My friend was checking out the outdoor shops. And then we went to Chicago, and Chicago is exceptionally cold in February. Never been that cold in my life, but it was brilliant. We went to the show, and everybody loved the shoes. And they said, where did we get your shoes from? And I'm saying England. And is that New England? No, not New England. England, across the water. Oh, near London? Yeah, near London. It's like they didn't buy. I couldn't sell because they didn't want the trouble of importation. And that was my first big problem. Here I am, 1968. I did get into the American market in 1979. 11 years of trying. and 6 failed attempts. 6 attempts were, I got a distributor, I got somebody to really have a go at distributing, buy the shoes, but 6 of them failed. The difference was in 1968, running was a very small part of the American culture. By 1975, millions of Americans were out running on the streets, doing 10Ks, doing marathons. And there was a magazine, Runner's World. Runner's World was an American magazine, and that was like a Bible. By 1970, it started off as a single A4 page. By 1975, it was a thick magazine, color, and everything that the runner wanted, events and whatever. So they all read this magazine. And Bob Anderson, who was the publisher, decided he was so influential. He could tell everybody which was the best shoe to buy. Probably a big mistake at the time, because you're thinking 350 million Americans, and this is growing. So maybe 10% are out there running, 35 million. Maybe 10% of those 3.5 million would like to buy that shoe. And of course, I'm pretty sure it was a Nike shoe. And well, Phil Knight, he imported his shoes from Japan at that time. And to turn up the production and to import them, it was fairly impossible. They couldn't do it. Bob Anderson did this for 2 years, and the sports trade, or the sports footwear trade, they really were so they were so messed up. They didn't know this was killing them, because you couldn't get the shoe for 6, maybe 9 months before the production came in, and then 3 months later he changed the shoe to another shoe. So after 2 attempts at telling everybody which shoe they should be wearing, he changed it to a star rating. And the star rating, 5 stars, the best shoe. And you went down 4 stars. And I knew we could make a 5-star shoe. I knew we could do that. Getting a number 1 was much too tricky. But a 5-star shoe, I was sure we could get that. And so in 1979, 1978, we produced a shoe for the Commonwealth Games in Edmonton. In fact, we produced 3 shoes. One was the Aztec, another one was Midas, and we had a spike called Inca. And we did well. We got a lot of medals from that. So by 1979, I'm again at the NSJ show with my gold range shoes, which included Aztec. And I got a lot of interest. In fact, Kmart wanted to buy 25,000 pairs. A bit too big for our factory. But, we knew if we got a 5-star shoe, we would need some help. And so Barter in those days, they had a big factory down in Tilbury, and they said they would help. But then he wanted a better price. Again, we were well aware that a lot of the sports footwear trade had gone to Korea and the Far East. And we did have a contact who was with one of the biggest factories in Korea. So, yes, we could do that. But that would take some time. Meanwhile, we would use barter. But I'm thinking 25,000 pairs, that's nice. But this is a big distributor. Came out. If we didn't get it right, that would be our first and last word. Indeed. But I also met Paul Fireman, who was a small wholesaler of outdoor goods, tents, fishing rods and stuff. And Paul said, Joe, if you get a 5-star, I'll be your distributor. But we must have a 5-star too. And that's where we were in February 1979. And the running shoe issue of Runner's World wouldn't come out until the August issue, which was usually out the last week in July. I'd been over to America after the show, and I'd gone to see Kmart, and I went to reception, and the girl said, "Look, who was it?" And I think his name was Biasati. Well, you go through that door there, and Mr. Biasati, I think, is on row H, desk 30. And I went in, and there's about 200 buyers in there. And I'm thinking, Now, I could make them 25,000 pairs, and I'd say this could probably be the last. So I'd almost decided then this is not going to be for me. So I went over to Boston, and I met up with Paul Feynman again, and his brother-in-law, who were running this Boston camping. So yeah, I got on well with Paul. This is great. But again, it was the same. Well, if your Aztec gets that 5 stars, we'll do it. Okay, so last week in July, I'm on the phone to Paul. Paul, please go down to the local kiosk and get a Runner's World. It should be out by now. He came back an hour later. Joe, Aztec, 5 stars. Brilliant. That was it. That was the hook. That was the thing that would now get us in. But not only did Aztec get 5 stars, Inca, our track spike, and Midas, our racing shoe, they also got 5 stars. So with 3 5-star shoes, we had the hook, and we were into America.
Wow, what a story in that. And then from there onwards, so this is really what I see the key stages of your growth is whatever you do, when you nail something, when you have a high quality product, when you're really passionate about it and you want to grow, you need to make sure that you grow it in a way that doesn't kill you, because with those big orders sometimes could be counterproductive. So you chose really somebody you could work with and trust to be your representative.
Absolutely, but that wasn't the product that really grew Reebok. We were doing nicely, very nicely, but we had a tech rep down in Los Angeles, and he's called Angel Martinez. And his wife is going to these aerobic classes. And she's coming back, full of it. Oh, this is great, wonderful. And I'll say, what are you doing? And, well, we're exercising to music, and it's fantastic. Arnold said, I'm going to come down and have a look. I'm going to see what's going on. So he did. And he saw the instructor wearing what we now call sneakers, trainers, and half the class also wearing sneakers. The other half not wearing anything. And I thought, why don't we make a special shoe specifically for aerobics and women? Make it fit a woman's foot. So the last itself would be a woman's last. So he thought that. After he goes to Boston to have a word with Paul Feynman, tells him about what's going on in Los Angeles, and Paul saying, whoa, look, Arnold, we're a running company, and we're doing nicely. Our sales are up. We're doing great. Why do we want to make a shoe for a few girls doing what's it called? Aerobics. Why do we want to? Arnold wasn't put off. Arnold went round to the back door and had a word with Steve Liggett. Steve Liggett was our production man, and he's backwards and forwards to Korea now. And he said, come on, Steve, make me 200 pairs. Just let's try it. He got his 200 pairs, and he took them off down to Los Angeles and gave them to the instructors and some of the leading girls. And really, that's it. We were then chasing the business all the way around the world. We were a $9 million company at that point. A year later, we're a $30 million company.
Wow.
And a year after that, we're a $90 million company. And from 90, it went up to 300 million, then 900 million, and that took about 4 to 5 years. We were nearly at $1 billion. And the problem was, well, how do we sell our product? It was, how do we supply? How can we keep up with the supply? And financing it. Well, those were 2 big problems. Financing wasn't the biggest problem, because we got Stephen Rubin, who came in. He was Pentland Industries, and he had a team who sourced product out of South Korea. So he was a sourcing man, and he just allowed Paul to have a credit line, because that's the biggest problem. If you bring in from the Far East, you need to be able to pay for them, or the bank needs to guarantee the payment. And of course, with only a year or so of business, you're not going to get a lot of help from the banks. So we got the help for the credit. And it wasn't long before that credit line was at $20 million. And at $20 million, Steve and Ruben was a bit sort of worried. Oh, this is big. But once it starts turning over and money, you can actually live off the turnover. But the biggest problem was, how do we get from 300 to 900 million? Because again, it's the same thing that Phil Knight had when he tried to, say, produce 2 million or 3 million pairs of shoes from above what he normally had. This were really Nike, who had been growing tremendously with the running boom. They just ran into a wall, and they had to pull out of, I think, about 3 factories. And just when we needed them, we went into those 3 factories. But if they hadn't been there, it could probably have killed off the Reebok business, because at that point, if you can't supply, if you starve the market too much, some others would have come in. As it happened, we managed the growth.
Well, and Joe, this is really, thank you for sharing these important moments. What are the biggest lessons that you want to share or give to current entrepreneurs that are looking to scale their businesses beyond the small kind of startup? What should they be aware of?
Well, we have a campaign that we're doing right now. I'm a bit out of retirement right now, and we have a campaign on just keep going. And I think that is one of the most important things you can do. Is there will be so many things that you're tripping over, so many hurdles, so many problems, but you just have to keep going and see your way through them. It's too easy to get, this is hard. Why do I need it? And if you don't need it, and if you've not got the excitement and the will to do it, then failure is one of the things that you risk. And I think that you have to really have a passion for what you're doing and believe, and you have to build the right team. You need the people who also believe with you. And so it's having that really is important.
You're sharing so important, lessons here, and absolutely, that's what the team can make you do many great things. Because by yourself, you can be running, you can be giving a lot of hours of your time, you can be a superstar, but it won't be enough if you don't have a great team behind you to really make a difference.
And you have to get the right people as well. And everybody's heard it. If you're the brightest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And that applies to building your team. You've got to get the right people you can trust, and you trust them with your business. They've got to become part of your business. If you're holding on too tight, they lose interest. You've got to give them some credit, give them some opportunity. And if you do that, they feel that they have ownership, and they need that. Your team need to be as big as you. They need to be out there, and they need to have the congratulations. They need to have that freedom. Okay, they'll make the odd mistake, and that's what you're there for, is to help guide that. But you're not there to control them. You're there to give them a mission and let them get on with it.
And absolutely, and set them up for success. And I guess one of the most important lessons of how to build a team and retain it. How did you attract the right people, Joe? And what are the things that you are looking for in the team members?
Well, luckily, we were really growing that big, and we were creating so much noise and so much visual noise that, and the best people were coming to us. They wanted to join Success, and that was probably a good advantage for us. People who want to join, rather than you put an advertisement out there and try to attract people. Your business should attract them. If it's doing well and you're spreading the excitement, then you'll find there's a lot of people knock on your door and say, I'd like to be part of your team. What does it take? Well, what it takes is being completely immersed in the product, being an absolute believer. And, there's there's competition out there, but you need to be out in front. You need to be leading that market. And if you're leading that market, you're not looking around at your competition all the time. You're concentrating on where to go next, what to do next. So you do attract that. And we had a winning culture, and we were very visible as a product. So I think that helped us. Being a winning culture and allowing people to become part of it, that culture. And Reebok just grew fantastically.
And when you got to the top, Joe, you must have attracted a lot of interest from everywhere. For how long did you lead the way? You stayed at the top, and what was life for you? At your best. Well, I don't know whether they're the best years for you personally, but your most successful years for the company.
Well, I mean, once the product took off, and it was 4, 5, 6 years of continual, just everything was exploding, everything was growing fast, and I had a good deal with Paul Fireman. Paul, it was like, you look after America, because I know if you're successful in America, the rest of the world will be easy for me. Mm-hmm. And so Paul ran America. And after I got America going with Paul, it was my job then to look at the rest of the world, because a lot of people were knocking at the door. We'd like some of these shoes. We'd like them. So I'm traveling the world then. And I used to probably do a global trip 3 times a year at least. And I put on over, the next 4, 5, 6 years, 30 more distributors. And again, our biggest problem was being able to find enough product. It was always that was always the problem. But we did, and I put on the distributors. But then we were also having some big events, and we had one in Monte Carlo, which I was hosting every year. And the Monte Carlo one was a pro celebrity event in aid of the Princess Grace Foundation. And we used to have people from Hollywood, including Frank Sinatra. He came over there. We had Sigourney Weaver, John Forsyth. A lot of big names came over, and tennis players as well. A lot of the top tennis players came over. So it was a very glittery sort of experience. People there, and I was invited into the palace in Monaco. I went there with Prince Rainier. We sat and had a conversation and drank some of his champagne. So those sort of experiences I hadn't expected to be there. We were making running shoes. We were a small company. To get to that size was incredible. And we were supplying prominent, the royal family were supplying Princess Diana and Wills and Harry. We were supplying them when they were young. So it was a big glittery occasion. And we got to just short of 4 billion. And I'm at the point now, well, yes, I'm at 35,000 feet for a lot of my life. I'm arriving at airports and being picked up by a limousine, going to the best hotels and dining at the best restaurants. So it was at the end of 1989, I decided, no, the challenge had gone. We got accountants, so many. We got lawyers, again, so many. And lots of teams of people building product. And, by that time, let's say the challenge had gone. It was no longer there. It was just a matter of waving flags and doing whatever. So I retired. Well, I thought I'd retired. I sort of sat back and the day-to-day job. No, I'm no longer the day-to-day job. I'm out. But the phone kept ringing. What happened with this job? What happened with that? So it was a bit like the Eagles in Hotel California. You can check out, you can never leave. And that's what more or less happened to me. I could check out, but I couldn't leave. And even today, I have a very close relationship now with the archive. So, but yes, I sat back at the end of 1989.
Well, and that's such a kind of profound moment, because what do you do when you're at the top? And there are some companies who get to the top, but Some say this could be as equal, if not more difficult, to stay at the top for a very long time because of many reasons. Not only because you're much bigger, you're slower in moving some things. You may not have that same passion as you had before. The challenge may have gone and so forth. So, what is your advice, for companies who are at the top today, to do in order to continue making a difference?
Yeah, I think that is it's a difficult one. I think you're right in this one. It's quite difficult to get to the top and then have a vision for where do we go from here because there's nobody in front of you. We had overtaken Adidas, we'd overtaken Nike. We became the #1 global brand, global sports brand. Where do you go from there? I'd stepped back to allow Paul Feynman to really run America, and now I was stepping back totally. And I think you have to get the right people again. We'd become corporate by that time. It's nearly a $4 billion company. It's instead of it being a brand or whatever, it's corporate. Now it's full of people who just operate in a corporate manner. But you need inspiration, and you need that inspiration at the top. And I think the problem happened a few years after I had left, and Paul Feynman, he wasn't too good health-wise. His health was going, and I think unfortunately he didn't find the right person. He needed to bring in a CEO who could really inspire. And
succession. The issue was succession, and a lot of businesses suffer with that.
Yes.
I think I see even a lot of family businesses, in fact, the way the entrepreneurs and the founders had such a great passion and they did something incredible, but they didn't have enough time to prepare sometimes the successes behind, or the family members that have even bigger passion to kind of say I want to do X, Y, and Z. And you're right, and it's so important. So thank you for bringing this topic, because we see there are a lot of great businesses that are purpose-driven, that can do a lot of good things, and care for not just making profits, but also care for the world, for the betterment of the world. I strongly believe business can be a great tool for the
more so now. There's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of inclusions. There's a lot of things now that we have we have this wonderful computer. We can speak to each other. Okay, we're very close at the moment, but we have people in Canada. When I'm speaking probably 3 or 4 times a week to either somebody in Australia, somebody in Dubai, somebody in America. And it's wonderful. So now you've got responsibilities which you didn't have before, because now you can do things. And Reebok, they have a foundation, and that does look after people. I think they've just given over the last, I think about a month ago, they've given $100,000 to 3 people who really qualified for help in this. And I think it's part of a big company now. I think that you're not just producing a product. You have to look after the world, and you have to put something in, and hopefully again make a difference there. Because product, yes, you can sell a lot of product. Reebok is a big name. Okay, Nike and Adidas at the moment are bigger, but Reebok is coming free from Adidas. It's already on its way to become part of ABG, and Shaquille O'Neal, who's in love with the brand. And I think that's going to make a big difference next year. I think we're going to see Reebok climbing again, because we've got somebody, I think, who's going to show it some passion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, your message is also have passion, have people really, and honestly, that's even what Steve Jobs was saying in Apple's core value. People with deep conviction and passion are the ones who can really change the world for the better. So I want to thank you for highlighting this, and you've seen a lot, and especially in your industry, you must have seen a lot of things. And what is a common belief you had about your industry that turned out to be wrong?
But don't be wrong. Wow. I suppose really I just thought we were just making sports shoes, and instead we've actually changed the perception of footwear. It's now we used to be a sports brand. We are now a fashion brand. It is so much street. Everybody, when we travel, we look around, and I look at people's feet, and probably 95% of people traveling are wearing sneakers, wearing some sort of sports shoe, because it's comfortable. It's changed that aspect, and it's the same with apparel. The apparel, they're also wearing that nice, easy wearing sports apparel. So I think we've changed how the Western world certainly looks at how you dress and the comfort. So we have very big fashion companies, and you look at Nike, who've continued to grow, and they're now over a $20 billion company. That's a big company. So yeah, I think if you say, well, I didn't expect that would happen. I expected we would be a nice size sports shoe company, but we're now fashion.
Well, thank you for sharing that. You're right. There's a lot of, you can see things many different ways. And I think if you're creative and if you have really deep passion, conviction for what you do, you can find and take it to really new heights. So a great lesson again. Joe, from just talking about care and what role care played into your success or the growth of Reebok?
Well, I think if you don't care, you don't really grow that family. I think caring means that you develop friendships. Right now, we are meeting a lot of people, and people are reading the book, and we're making a whole lot of new friends. It's not just that I'm speaking to you. I hope you're going to become a friend. I hope we're going to meet for lunch or dinner. And I hope we're going to share many more stories. And, for me, it is caring. It is saying, well, why not? It's a different way of life, and we must change. And it's not just something local. No, we're meeting everybody. And I think if you have a brand and a company, that you've got to share that with them. You may be the founder, which is great. For me, I don't need to be an owner. I'm a founder. And that, to me, you can't change. Ownership changes, CEOs change, but founders don't change. Founder, it will always be a founder. And so sharing the business, sharing the company is the nicest thing for me, that people can be part of that company. And not everybody's good, not everybody fits in, but you see that, and when you see it, the advice is, well, if they don't fit in, please, find somewhere where you fit, and then you can really bring in those people. So yeah, I think you've got to care about the people. And you can't care about everybody. You can try, but if you don't try, that's the bad part. You sometimes get a lot of ego, people who could talk a lot, and they come over, and it's about them. I would say, up until maybe almost 12 months ago, did people know that Joe Foster was founder of Reebok? Not many. Insiders knew, but no, because it was never about me. It was always about Reebok. That was the important thing, is not Reebok. Let's grow that, not sort of stand up there with ego. So, yeah, ego can get in the way for some people.
Well, Joe, I wanted to just stop for a moment and thank you really for sharing those stories, giving that guidance, not just through this podcast, but through the book, through everything you do, and spreading that really care, because that inspires many future leaders. And I strongly believe that care is not a weakness. Care actually can multiply significantly your success of your business, of your really well-being, your everything really. The more, starting with the closest people, to the left of you, to the right of you, to your family, your team. That family approach that you've shared. I mean, so many great success stories have emerged. And last week we had a great guest from Japan, which showed why Japan has some of the oldest companies on the planet, because they treat their employees as family. And that's what you mentioned as that approach is. I just want to express that gratitude that you're making a difference, and by sharing those stories with people.
It's a pleasure. It really is. It's and it's good to share your stories. And I do hope that CEOs or whoever's founding or leading a company, they do understand that care is a very, very big part of that company, because you need to grow. Companies, you can't just do it on your own. You need other people. And it's nice to promote those people up in front. Get those people to really feel that they are cared for and that they're part of. It's so important.
Joe, a question about, what is your vision for a better, more caring world?
Well, it's a difficult one, that, because we're up against human nature. And human nature can do all sorts of things. And it would be nice to think that there is a more caring world out there. And I don't think we should stop trying to be caring. But as I say, human nature is very strange, does strange things. And people do try to take an advantage if they can. So I just think you keep trying. I just think you keep going at it. It's about, it comes back to just keep going.
Until you make it big in America. Keep trying. I love your story. So, what a great message. Keep trying and don't get discouraged with the setbacks. You eventually attract the right people.
Yeah.
Any final words, any message for really the listeners that you wanted to share?
Well, I think, again, what you need to do is, you try your best. You might not be successful, but failure isn't a problem. Failure means that you found something that you didn't expect, but it's a lesson, and you just move around it, and you do try again. Because, as an entrepreneur, try to do it when you're young, because that's when you're undefeatable. That's when you've not got the problems that somebody old has been through some problems and they have not got that. Those problems can haunt. So you've just got to learn young. And we were very fortunate that we were young when we learned a few of the lessons, a few of the problems, and you learn how to get around them. We were only 4 years into our business when we got a letter from the lawyers of Adidas.
Mm-hmm.
And our silhouette was 2 stripes and a T-bar. And they said that infringed their 3 stripes. And you're thinking, we had to change our name. Now what? And we thought, well, just a minute. Adidas know we're here. Yeah, Adidas found it necessary to write us a letter. That's great. We thought that was really good. I wouldn't say we got them worried, but we're worried enough to sort of say, we don't like what you're doing. And that letter was pinned on the wall, and it was there for a long, long time. And all we did, we changed to the vector, which you see on the book. So we changed to that, which was a better silhouette than we had before. So it's like what you've got to do is to get used to things. That how do you get around them? Be prepared is a very good thing to be. I know I was in the Boy Scouts. Be prepared was a motto, but be prepared is good. But don't worry about it.
Love it. Because I had some questions, and I want to show you at least one here from the audience, just to answer. we have from Eli Jeleva. When you are close with the team and you care about them, what advice would you give for having hard conversations such as performance or accountability? In other words, when people don't perform, how do you approach that?
Well, I think if they're not performing, you've got to ask them the question of what is the problem?
Yeah.
They have a problem. What is the problem? And if they're willing to tell you, you may be able to help them. If not, they're probably in the wrong business.
I love that. I think having that conversation is a deep care as well, because it's honesty, and it means, hey, you don't have to be together, but more importantly, are you okay first? What's the problem? Because if you know what's the problem, you can address it. Maybe they're having home issues, or maybe they have something that affects them. And you're right, absolutely. That's a great advice. So just ask questions with care and interest, and that should be sufficient. Joe, it's been a wonderful having you today. Sincerely, thank you for really making the time, and it was so really inspiring listening to your story. I'm sure you have shared this story, and I'm sure you've shared some interesting insights. I highly recommend people to take a deeper dive by taking your book, The Shoemaker. And if people want to ask a question or get in touch, what is normally the best way to reach you?
Well, you can reach us through the website, which is reebokthefounder.com, and we will try to answer your questions. We try to get back very quickly with any questions or problems. If you wanted a signed book, then you probably have to go through that, because with COVID, we've not been able to get out and do any signings. But you can buy the book through our website. But it's in bookshops, and it's on Amazon. It's very available. And like I said, but if you want to ask a question, yes, go to our website.
Well, I recommend they look into the book first and see where a lot of questions may be answered there. But thank you once again, Joe. Wish you a great rest of the day, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Marian. It's been a pleasure, and I hope somebody gained a little bit of, help from our conversation. If they did, initially a small bit, then that's great. But
I'm sure it will. It's making a difference already, and it was a lot of values that addressed for many different target audiences, from young people to current CEOs to people or owners that are growing their businesses. There's a lot of value, and we also will reshare that by doing small snippets of this, and we'll be sharing this with the world.
That's fantastic, and it really is a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you.